Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Megan and we're going to be doing a really fun fall gnome class today. A few of the supplies that you'll need as we get started is you will need something to paint on. I'm painting on 11 by 14 canvas paper today. You'll also need an array of acrylic paints. You can use blue, yellow, red. Those are our primaries. You can mix any color from those primaries. So if you have just those primaries, you're in good shape. But if you also happen to have an orange or a green or brown, you're welcome to grab those as well. In addition to those colors, black and white is always helpful to add a lighter tone or add some shading to any given hue, which is a given color. In addition to the paints and the canvas or something to paint on, you'll need a small plate to mix colors. You'll need a cup of water to rinse your brushes. And then you'll need an array of brushes. So small, medium, and large sizes will be just fine for today's class. I always suggest grabbing a paper towel for any messes. It's always nice to have one nearby in case something happens. And then if you wanted to grab a pencil today for any sketching, you could certainly do that as well. So that's an option for you. So our inspiration today are fall gnomes. This is going to be a lighthearted class, so I really want you to bring your personality into this picture. So as we think about gnomes and we think about the fall, our gnomes are going to be holding something. The inspiration today, I may do 2 gnomes, I may do 3 gnomes. The more gnomes we paint, the longer it will take. So I may do 2 gnomes today just to show you the amount of detail that goes into it. And if we wanted to certainly do more, we could always add another gnome in or put a pumpkin next to the gnome or whatever. Okay, so you can make some of those choices along the way. But one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to give the background a little bit of a scene first. So we could paint just gnomes on our white canvas, but let's give the background a little scene. You can think about where you want your gnomes maybe to be. Maybe you want your gnomes to be inside of a house. Maybe you want your gnomes to be outside. You can make some of those choices. So for me, I'm going to do my gnomes, let's see here. Maybe I'll do my gnomes outside. Maybe I'll do some green grass with just a blue sky just to keep it really easy. Because then if I wanted to put like floating leaves or something, I could. So one of the first things I'm going to do to get started is to create a light blue background. And I'm going to use my blue paint on my plate. And I'm going to mix some white with that. To make a light blue sky. So in these classes, I'll always encourage you to take your time mixing colors that you like. I always like to get my brush a little bit wet and then wipe off the water droplets. But I have a little bit of blue here, and I'm going to bring that into some of the white that I have nearby. And I'm just going to come up with a nice light blue sky color. Now you can put your gnome into any scene that you want. So we're creating the scene together. And one of the things we're going to do is I'm going to make the ground. I'm going to do a line to say this is the ground, this is the sky. And I'm just going to do a line down here. Say everything above this line is my sky. Everything below this line is the ground. Okay? We can always touch up this sky, or the line at the bottom, so don't worry about that too much. And I'm just doing long, smooth, horizontal brush strokes. And we're going to be painting the gnomes on top of this, so this is just background. Sometimes I like to add a little water to my brush to move the paint around, which is really fun. Any way you want to fill this sky. It doesn't need to be all thick, heavy paint. You can easily bring a little bit of paint, a little bit of water, And if you're using acrylic, the paint has to still be wet for the paint to move with a little water. So I just grab a little bit of water on my brush and move it around, left, right, left, right. And this sky could be as light or as dark as you want it to be. I'm just having fun here. If you want your sky to be lots of different colors, go for it. This is your scene. So you could do some light blues, you could do some other colors. I'm just doing a plain sky. I could bring in a little bit of a lighter blue here if I wanted to. If you wanted to bring in fluffy clouds after, you could. These are all your choices as an artist today. At any time during this class, I encourage you to pause the video if you need a little bit more time. It's important that you go at your own speed. And I'm going pretty quickly here because we're just painting the background. And I'm making sure I get in all those white areas of the canvas. Getting a little bit of water on my brush to help with the blending. Adding a little bit of water to paint can change the opacity of the paint pigment, so it could make it a little lighter. Sometimes that's helpful when you're blending one color into another. And I'm just doing long, smooth, horizontal brush strokes. So a little paint, a little water. I'm being very conscious to make sure that my brush is not dripping with water. It can happen easily. It may have already happened to some of you. Water will drip down your page. Just be cautious of how much water is on your brush before you actually put it onto your canvas. And I have like a nice basic coverage right now, and that's all you need because we're really going to be putting a lot on top of this. So you don't need to go too crazy. If you want to come down here and make this blue line a little more even, you could. If you want to add any clouds, you can. I'm not going to be too specific right now, but I'll give everyone to finish your sky. A moment to finish your sky. Okay. And then I'm going to paint my grass green. To make green, it is yellow and a touch of blue. A little yellow will go a long way. So I'm just putting a little bit of yellow on my plate. And I already have a little bit of blue. And I'm just doing a little bit of green grass on the bottom. So let's see, I have my yellow right here and I have my blue. And I'm just going to take a little bit of my yellow, put it over here, and I'm just going to take a little bit of my blue and I'm going to mix a green. You want a lot more yellow than blue. If you have more blue, then you're going to need to add a lot more yellow. So start with a lot of yellow and just a little bit of blue. You can always add more blue. There's a nice green. This is like a grasshopper green. And I'm just going to paint the bottom green. And you can use this green to really clean up the line with your sky as well. And I'm just using the biggest brush that we have. During this class, you can always use whatever brush you're most comfortable with. So follow your own intuition on what brush you want to use. This line doesn't have to be perfectly straight. If it's a little off, that's okay. It's like it's a little hill. Most ground isn't flat, let's be honest. Most people want their yards to be flat, and most of our yards are not flat. You're welcome to use water down here, but just make sure your paint goes all the way off the left side of the page and it goes off the right side of the page. So you can see I just have a really fun little scene that I've created here pretty easily, despite I've put us outdoors. I have a blue sky and I have green grass. And based on where you live, there's definitely green grass during the fall. It just slowly gets covered up, right? By leaves or snow or this and that. So I'll give everyone a minute to play around with the background. And we want this to dry. So if you need to pause the video, take a little bit more time, feel free to do that. And you can think about what you want to put into your scene. Again, doing 3 gnomes, doing 1 large gnome, doing a tree, doing a bench, thinking of the fall objects. I may do maybe 2 gnomes, maybe I'll put a pumpkin in between the gnomes. So I want you to think about what are some of the things that you love the most about fall. So you could do, one of your gnomes could be holding a pie, one of your gnomes could be holding a pumpkin, one of your gnomes could be holding a hot coffee. What are some of the things that I love the most about fall? I love getting out my winter gloves. I love the foliage is beautiful. So many things. But you can think about what you want your gnomes to hold. Okay. So what you can do, this is a little bit of a planning step, is for you to use a pencil for basic placement of objects. So as an example, I may do a little bit of a pumpkin here in the middle. So let me find the middle. Let's see. So I might do a pumpkin right here. And you don't have to do this. You could do 3 gnomes and just start with a gnome in the middle. That's fine. But I'm starting with a pumpkin here. And my pumpkin can come down onto my ground a little bit. That's okay. And I can always layer more pumpkins in. And then I want to think about how high I want my gnomes to be. I could even have a gnome sitting on top of my pumpkin. That could be pretty funny. But I'm going to put a gnome over here. And the top of my gnome hat is going to be over up here. So I'm going to think about where I want the top of the hat to be and where I want the bottom of the feet to be. And I'm going to center it kind of in this space over here. So I want my gnome to go to here. That's the top of the hat. I just have a dot. And then directly below, the gnome's feet can be down here. And then the next thing you can do is, well, the hat is going to be pretty tall. So you can say, well, how tall do I want my hat to be? I want my hat to be pretty tall. So the rim of my hat is going to be here. So then you can start to be playful with the shape of your gnome and the body and things. So as an example, I could just do the hat first if I wanted to. So the gnome's hats can be pretty wiggly. So you can do your hat as wide as you wish. The hat can have a little bit of a bend to the top. Okay, does not need to be, straight across. The hat actually will kind of come down on the sides a little bit and wrap around the gnome's face. And then you can be playful with the beard. So this guy's going to have a little ponytail holding his beard, because why not? And then I can do his body coming down to the ground. And you can play with how wide or how narrow our gnomes are. And that's why we use a pencil. And he's got little rounded shoes. Can always make his beard bigger. His beard needs to be bigger. See that? I just made his beard a little more full. Him or her. You can decide the character of your gnomes here. And we're going to be painting in and filling this in, so no big deal. So you can play with the shape of your hat. And we're just doing these basic shapes. So hat basic shape, beard basic shape, and then body and toes. We'll be painting this all in. And then you can, the gnome's nose is up here at the top, so you can give a big rounded nose for the gnome nose at the top. And the nose is touching the top of the rim of the hat. So the nose is actually kind of just tucked under the top of the hat a little bit. You can see how it's kind of cut off, which is really fun. And my gnome will be holding things, but I'm going to add the hands and the objects after. So take just a minute to draw your gnomes. So here's one. It's just a hat, a beard, a nose, a rectangular body, and then 2 half circles for the feet. So just do the same thing for me. I'm going to do 2 gnomes, and I might do something else funny in the background here. Not sure yet. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say, where do I want the top of my hat to be? Right about here. Where do I want the bottom of my feet to be? Over here. And then this, I want them to be fairly even. So if I line this hat up with this one, there we go. And just have fun with the hats. The hats are a little lower on the sides. Maybe this hat will just do a little bit of a curl on the end. So your hats can have different tops. You could have a pom-pom on the top of your hat. You can really get creative here. This gnome might have a beard that like curls out. I'm getting a little silly here. Maybe he has a big mustache that comes up under his nose. This is where art can be really fun. And then I'm going to do his body down. And just 2 little half circles for feet. Straight lines. And just bring him down to the ground. And I'll add his hands and his arms after. And I kind of want to do like a little gnome popping its head up right here because I think that'd be really funny. So I'm just going to have a little fun creative time here. It's like a little gnome with like a little nose. Just kind of popping up in the middle. And maybe I'll do another pumpkin here. So for me, I'm just kind of going for a little bit of like a well-balanced look. So I just put a couple pumpkins in, keep it nice and easy. But then we can fill this in and paint it in together, okay? So I want you to think about the size of your gnomes. If you wanted to make them bigger, feel free to pause the video, take your time if you need to adjust the sizing. And we can go from there. So everything that we're painting is going to need a base coat. So I am also thinking about the colors I'll be using in today's class. They're all going to be fall-like colors, so oranges and reds and browns. That's just what I'm going to be focused on today. If you want to use other colors like blues and yellows and greens and purples, like feel free to paint your gnomes any way that you want, but I am going for a fall colored theme personally. So I'm going to start getting the colors ready for my gnome selections. If you are still drawing, take your time. Just feel free to pause the video and rejoin us. Hit the play button again when you're ready to start painting and mixing colors. So drawing can be tricky for some, takes a lot of practice, but I want you to be happy with the overall base drawing of your picture. Okay, so I just put a little bit of red on there, and I'm gonna do orange colored hats. So I have a little bit of red. It's a lot of red. And I'm gonna grab a little bit of yellow, and I'm gonna make one color orange. So to make orange, it's yellow with a little bit of red. A little red will go a long way. And whenever you paint, always take your time to make colors that you enjoy. Okay, so there's an orange. This is pretty bright orange. I might grab a tiny touch of blue just to kind of give it a little bit more of a brown tone. So orange and blue make brown, but I'm just taking a little bit of blue and mixing it with my orange just to kind of make it a little more subtle per se. There we go. So that's kind of a nice orange to start with. And my gnomes, I'm just going to start with this one over here. And I want you to use a smaller brush that you feel like you're in control over for these hats. And you're doing basic coats, so you can always add like spots to your hats. Some of your hats may have like a plaid texture. You could add like a white pom-pom on the end. Just start with basic colors, and then you can continue to kind of bring your picture to life. So it's starting with the basics. This is a nice dark orange. Looks good. I may take this orange and make the body of this gnome over here this color. So I like to use the same colors on the picture, but they don't always need to be in the same spots. So like I don't have to have, the hats don't always need to be the same color, but I like this orange, so I'm going to use it over here for his body. And I could always use it as an accent color for his hat too. So there's a lot of different things I could do. I could do his hat as a stripes, and then do stripes of one of these colors. I'm going to paint around his shoes. Some of your bodies may not be as big as mine. You may have more beard than me. You could always paint a beard on top of this too. Like more of a beard. I just have a mustache. And I'm just do a quick second coat on this hat since it's almost dry. So you will need second coats, so take your time with these steps and details, especially since we put a background color in. Okay, perfect. And I may think about, well, what do I want to do for my other secondary colors? I may make a mustard color. So I kind of have like a light yellow right here. Might take a little bit of the red and just see what kind of secondary color I come up with. That could be a good fit for the scene. Let's try this color. Oh, this color is actually a good color for the nose. It's actually a good flesh color. So I'm going to paint the nose this color. And I'm going to use a smaller brush, but we're just filling in each of our objects kind of as we see fit. So I have some noses. These noses are actually need to be a little bit lighter. They're a little too orangey, so it's okay for me. I want to make this into my flesh color. I'm just going to take a minute. Just get that right. But really, I want you just to follow your own intuition for your picture today. There, I have some noses in. I'm going to get a little bit of an orange going here. For my another color. So this is another fall color here. Play with the paints on your palette and find colors that you like. That is my biggest suggestion. Whenever you paint, use colors that you like. So if you like purples, bring purple in as an accent color. So the accent colors for my painting today are like this reddish orange, and then I'm doing other orange colors, right? I said I was going to try to be thoughtful to use all fall-like colors for my gnomes today. If you want to do the same thing, just use fall colors that you mix, that you come up with. It's a combination of oranges and yellows and reds. Find those tones and shades that you enjoy. That's the name of the game. And I'm just slowly dancing my way around his beard here. Use a brush that works for you. Take your time. And this color is nice. It's nice and light. It stands out. I like that. I might mix like a brownish golden brown for the beard colors. But I'm just going to use the rest of this paint up. So I might do, maybe I'll just do some fun striping for the hat over here. Why not? And then I'll bring in another color to complement this color. I'm using a really thick brush right now. I should probably be downsizing to another brush, but you can be playful with some of those details too. So I'm just bringing in this color over here. And if I don't like this, I can always paint over it. It's okay just to be a little footloose and fancy free. Art's always about having ideas and just kind of going with it. So there's that. I might paint the body of this little guy in the middle, this red. There. And I'll add a beard or something on this little gnome as well, but I'm just taking it one step at a time. All right, you can figure out, once you have some of the basic colors, you can kind of figure out what's next, what's the next color for you. Brown is a really important color for me to mix. So I'm gonna make a brown. So to make a brown, it is yellow, blue, and green. Sorry, yellow, blue, and red all mixed together. So I made it green with blue and yellow, and I'm gonna grab a little bit of red. This will give me a brown. Now I might need to add a little bit more yellow. I might need to add a little bit more blue. That is the name of the game. When you make brown, you can continue to play and mix until you come up with the right color. All right. Just take your time mixing these colors. Brown either happens quickly or it doesn't happen quickly. It's really just taking your time. Yellow is a really important component of brown. There, I'm finally getting a brown. This is an orangish brown, so I'm going to add a little bit more yellow. Don't need any more red. So maybe it's saying, Megan, add a little bit more blue. There we go. The blue is making it a little bit more brown itself. Perfect. And brown is nice because you can always change the tone of the brown. You can make it lighter or darker, which is really nice. Perfect. So I'm really close. My brown is a little blue now, but it's okay. I can always grab a little bit more yellow. Not a big deal. So take a few minutes to mix your brown. Just have a little patience. This is a fun process. You can think about where you might want to use brown. The colors of my beard are going to be a light brown color. So I'm going to make a brown first, and then I'll take some of it aside to make a light brown. So I'm making enough brown that I can kind of use the brown in different areas. If your brown looks a little green, add a little red. If it looks a little blue, add a little yellow, a little red. I was just making a little bit more. So I was stretching what I had, and then the tone changed a little bit, and that's okay. There, I have a nice brown now, I think. All right. Pretty close. And just take a few minutes. Sometimes you can see a little bit of like a green swirl or see a little bit of a red swirl. Just take a minute to blend that in. Now I'm going to take a little bit of my brown right here, and I'm going to add a little bit of white in it. And I'm going to try to mix the color of my beards. Now I want it to be fairly light. Nice. So I have a nice light brown. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to paint my beards. Now that's pretty dark. So I could easily come in and add a little bit more white to this. So you kind of just play as you go. And we can add some, you could also do white beards too. I see a lot of white beards. So you could even put white right on top of your brown and make it much lighter. So you can see how, and I'm just taking white on my brush and kind of mixing it in with this brown as I paint. And I'm getting some fun texturing, nice blending of colors. So I am painting this beard. Now acrylic dries quickly, so you can always come in and add more paint. You can always change the color. So starting somewhere is really good. I'm kind of adding some white highlights on top of my brown. You can see it's kind of standing out a little bit. It's good. Play with your beard. And I can make this lighter, right? If you really want your beard to stand out, make it lighter in color. We've done a lot of gnomes in the past, and the gnomes typically have like a lot of like white beards, so you can start with a light brown and just put a little bit of white on top of it. That would be fine. And you can always make your nose a little darker or lighter, so you can kind of play with that. And I'm playing with the texture of the beard. And I'm gonna let it dry. It's okay just to start somewhere and let it dry. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to start painting this guy's beard. Use a small brush so you're in control. I'm using like a pretty big brush right now. I'm trying to be very careful, but I should switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. can get some fun swirlies, like curly cues, if you use a smaller brush. Nice. And I'll come in here with a little bit of white to just add some nice highlights for these beards. I also want to make these hats a little bit more brown. So what I might do is, with a little bit of brown paint, I may do some outlining. Maybe on the left side of this hat. And I can kind of create some wrinkles. Maybe I could outline the whole hat with a little bit of brown. And then you can add some like little wrinkles in the hat. You can outline like the brim of the hat with a darker line. So this is just a little bit of brown on my brush, and I'm just adding some kind of crinkles in the hat, some horizontal lines. See that detail, how it really made that hat just come right off the page? You could easily do that. I may outline the side of the body, even though I'm gonna paint arms and things in here. I could paint the feet of my gnome brown shoes. I may want these to be darker. I could always add a little bit of black with my shoes, but you can see how my gnome is really coming to life here. I am going to make the beards lighter. They're a little too like beige for me right now, so I'm going to make them a little lighter just to make them pop out. And I can think about, well, what do I want the colors to be in this other hat over here? Let's see. I could do brown. I'm not sure yet. I might outline the body over here as I figure that other hat out. I could outline and do the feet. Brown feet, brown shoes. Again, they're going to be holding things pretty quickly here. I could outline this hat with a little bit of brown if you want to make it stand out. I'm thinking a yellow might be a nice accent for this hat, for my stripes. Also, if you have a tiny brush, you can outline the nose of the gnome, but you want a really tiny brush. So with a steady hand, you can do an outline for the gnome's nose. And I'm going to come in, I'm just going to outline this little gnome nose, outline this gnome's hat. And I'll fill that in with something, maybe a yellow. There. My little gnome in the middle. And I'm just gonna, he's just gonna be sitting on top of this pumpkin. And my pumpkins will be orange. So you can see with taking a minute just to do a little bit of extra highlighting is a really good thing. I'm gonna make an orange, or a yellow, excuse me, to fill in this hat. So again, you're kind of going at your own speed, filling in your gnomes as you wish. And I'm going to do a yellow, so I might do a little yellow and a little bit of white. And I might just do a tiny touch of red. Not sure. I kind of want a different style yellow. I kind of want a mustard yellow, but sometimes it's tricky. Or a golden yellow. So I'm kind of playing with browns and yellows and a little orange, trying to get a little bit darker of a yellow. Okay, I think I'm close. So I'm just going to use this over here. It's a nice fall color. You can barely see it, which means I'm going to need to do 2 coats, which is fine. 2 coats is important. And my colors could be like, from a contrast perspective, it could be a little bit different. It's okay. And I can still always change that if I want to. So if this is too much of a peachy color, excuse me, if it's too much of a peachy color, I can always come in with an orange and make that hat a little more orange. So it's okay to kind of change things up as you go. It's a little peachy, so I might bring in a little bit of an orange color to put on top of the peachy color, just because you can. You can do anything you want. And I like making changes along the way because it kind of reduces the risk of you like having fear as you make choices, just knowing you can always paint over something. So making this hat a little more orange versus peachy. Okay. And I might bring some of that orange into this hat in the middle so it all matches visually. And the smaller the brush you use, the more control you'll have over the details. So again, I'm doing like fall-like colors intentionally. Since I have an orange going here, I am going to just do a basic coat for these pumpkins. The pumpkins will need multiple coats, so I'm just doing a nice base coat for these pumpkins. While I have this orange handy. And I could always add a little bit of white to this orange just to help it with the coverage. So you can kind of follow the edge of the pumpkin. Some pumpkins can be lighter than others. I need to mix more orange because I ran out. All good. Mixing more colors is bound to happen. Just mixing a little bit more orange. Filling in this pumpkin. I'll come in and do a second coat with some more dramatic, like rounded pumpkin-like shapes like this. And I can also do the second coat of paint so it's more of like the pumpkin-like colors that I want. But it's good. You can see I have different tones. I have light orange, I have dark orange. I may even put some grass in here, like coming up in between, just to add a little bit of extra texture. Those are all choices that you get to make. What else do I want to add and where? And we are also certainly going to put something in our gnome's hands. And that's totally optional. If you decide you don't want to, you don't have to. But my gnomes will be holding on to things. One of my gnomes might be holding a coffee. That could be kind of fun. And then you can use a secondary color. So I'm using a dark orange to kind of give it some rinds. So you want to use a darker color to either create an outline, give it some rinds. Whenever you paint an object, we talk about this a lot in our classes, is you use the darker colors and lighter colors to give it depth. So I could even take even a little bit of red and outline some of these little pumpkins with a little bit of red as my shaded colors. Maybe doing a little bit of red on the bottom, outlining these pumpkins with a little bit of red, especially while this is still wet. You can see how it adds a little bit of texture and depth to these pumpkins, which is really fun. A little gnome sitting on top, which is super fun. And you can look around and keep working on your details. I realized that this gnome over here, his nose needs to be outlined with a little bit of brown. So there, now his nose is standing out. You can think about the beard color. I might make it a little lighter, see what happens. But I want you to be happy with your beards. In the inspiration, there's like layers of colors within the beards. So you can be playful on how much time you want to spend there, but maybe you just grab a small brush and you just paint in a little bit of like white to make your beards a little lighter. That's fine. If you want to have golden highlights in your beard, you could do golden highlights. If you want to have darker, this one has a mustache. You can see what a little bit of white looks like over here compared to these other subtle colors. So these are all the colors that you get to choose. And I'm just using the tip of the brush. Give the bottom of this one a little bit of a swirl. Okay, so you can kind of pick and choose. You can always outline your beards with like a little bit of a darker color. That's another touch that we can consider. But you just want a really tiny, tiny brush for those details. A brush with a really fine point. So the brown is a nice color. Once you're happy with the overall color of your beard, you can do a really thin outline. This is optional. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. So I just outlined the beard a little bit with the brown. Nice. And I can do the same thing with my mustache. Happy little gnome scene here. But these are all the base colors. And then we're going to add hands and we'll add our objects. And next. But I want you to be happy with the base colors of our feet and our gnomes. You could even, if you added any pumpkins, you could even outline your pumpkins with a little bit of brown if you needed to kind of separate the shapes from one another. If you wanted to add a brown stem, you could add a brown stem. Those are all the choices that you can make as an artist today. So many choices. I might do like little white dots on the little orange hat for the little gnome. This is where you can, your ideas can really just go crazy. My orange hat is still a little wet, so I'm just going to leave that. Excuse me. Okay. So I want you to keep working on all these details as these ideas come to you. I may even do with a little bit of white paint. You can kind of highlight some of the crunches in the hat, which is always really fun. A little bit of the movement, a little bit of the shaping. Maybe a little bit of white paint on top to kind of highlight the side. Maybe one side has a little bit of a lighter accent. You can play with that. I can add in a little bit of highlighting over here too. I'll add some of the brown shaping in this space too, but I was just doing a little bit of white since I had it on my brush. And I'm just going to add tiny little white polka dots to this hat, just because, what a fun idea. There. So your ideas, you follow your intuition there. Be sure to use, if you wanted to play with the darker contrast, you can outline your hats or some of the crinkle in these hats, like a little bit of shaping with a little bit of a dark paint. I do the same thing over here just so they can see. A little bit of a outline over here. Just gives the hat a little shape. Nice, and you want a nice clean line above the nose. So the hat really sits right on top of the head. So that was really fun. Now you can think about what you want your objects to be. So you could even have, if you don't want to do tons of objects, you could do like your gnome waving as an example. So I'm just going to take a little bit of just like a brown and white color. And I'm going to do this gnome is going to be holding up a cup or a mug. So I'm just going to draw a mug in the middle of his body. This can be a very large mug of coffee. Look at this, so funny. And I'm just going to fill it in. I can always change the color of this cup. And I definitely want it to have a handle on it. So I'm just putting a handle on. I can make it a little wider if I want to make it a little wider. And I picked a lighter color because of the contrast. I want it to stand out a little bit. I definitely want the inside of the cup to be a little darker, so I'm just going to use a little bit of brown to paint the interior a little darker. And I can just let it dry. Maybe on the inside of the handle, it's a little darker. I'll add his arms kind of coming around in a minute with his hands holding it. But I'm going to let the coffee dry because I can always change the cup of coffee too. And I kind of want to paint a pie. I love pies. I think it'd be really fun to paint a pie. I don't know if I've ever painted a pie before, so we're going to do this together. I'm going to give it a little bit of a lighter base. And I'm using a teeny tiny brush. And my pie is going to be, he's going to be holding it over here. So this is like the pie pan over here. And then the pie is going to be on top. So it's like a golden brown pie crust. So I have to mix a golden brown color. Wish me luck. It's yellow and oranges and browns. And the shape is like an oval. So let's see if I can paint an oval on top of this pie tin. Okay. Looks pie-like shaped. Kind of looks like a loaf of bread, but we're going to call it a pie. Don't tell anybody. Okay, we'll make it look like a pie. We'll make it steam. We'll add some details. And just do a nice solid coat. We're going to do another coat of paint on top of our pie. But the tin is going to be a little bit of a gray color. So there's my pie. Looks like a loaf of bread, but it's super cute. But I'm going to make it look like a pie in a minute here. I'm going to make a gray color for the tin pan. I'm going to use a tiny touch of black with white to make a gray. Use the smallest brushes you have for this detail work. You'll be more in control over your brush strokes. So I have a little scoop of white right here. A tainted white. And I'm just going to bring a little bit of black in to make a gray for the pie tin. And the pie tin can be more narrow at the bottom, and it can kind of come up a little bit. So you can play with the shape of your pie tin. Not bad, not bad. It looks like a pie. I know I need a second coat for my pie on top, so that's no problem. And then I can think about, is there anything else that I want to add while those items are drying? I could do like a little pine cone, kind of tucked in right here, a little brown pine cone. I can add some detail to it. I can add a little bit of a brown pine cone over here. So you can figure out how you want to fill in your base. I might do a little bit of a brown pine cone over here. It's kind of like a little teardrop shape. They're just little objects to help fill in the scene. You can also add grass too. You could also add another pumpkin. Anything goes here. I'm going to clean my brush, give my pie another paint, another coat. Your gnomes may be bigger than mine. They may be smaller. Everybody's gnomes, everybody's picture is going to look so different. So just embrace your scene and continue to evolve it in a way that makes you happy. So if you wanted to add something else to your scene, think about, well, what else could that be? I'm going to put a little bit of white on top of my pie because that will help cover up the man's body behind it. And then I'll put some orange back on top. Sometimes if you put white over another layer, it will kind of help cover it up. And then you can come back in with that other color. So I'll make my pie a little orange again. I'm just going to let that dry. But this is where it's your scene. I could put some leaves falling from the sky, just little leaves here and there. I'm doing really simple, like birch-like leaves, not like 5-pointed leaves. So this is just a fun, I just have a lot of blue space, so I'm just putting a few leaves falling from the sky. Like there's a tree around us and it's a little windy and it's just these things are happening. This is making it look a little fall-like. You can just do little leaves. You could do some bigger leaves. And I'm going to use a secondary color, right? So I did some yellow leaves. Let's see what a few orange leaves look like. Change the direction, change the size a little bit. I could come in here with a teeny tiny brush and make these like look just like most perfect of a leaf. Do little leaves. There, that's kind of fun. Like there's a little smattering of leaves coming down. Excellent. You could always add a secondary color. Here's my pie. Terrific. And your objects can have different colors on them. It's okay. It can have a little white, a little this. And then I'm gonna find my person's arms here. The person's arms are like the color of, maybe he'll be waving. Maybe this arm will be over here and it'll be just waving. And then this guy's gonna have some fingers that are just gonna come up from below. And it's gonna be holding the underside of this pie. So I'm just gonna give him a couple of fingers. Look, right down here. Excuse me. Look, he's waving. I gave him 4 fingers. Gnomes don't need 5 fingers, right? Excuse me. But I just did 3 little fingers coming up. from the bottom here. And I can outline that hand on the underside of the pie with some dark paint. So this one's waving. I think my baby's just gonna sit here in the middle, my little gnome, and he's just gonna sit on top of the pumpkin. He's not gonna have any hands or anything. And then this gnome is holding a mug. So you could think about what parts of the mug you cover up. So typically, you know, there's some fingers that come inside. Maybe there's a thumb on top. And this is an arm. The arm can be painted like the shirt, like the body, but you want some of the fingers to come out. So you can be playful with how you want the hand to come in. Now I just covered up with like the whole handle, which is fine. I'm probably going to brighten up my mug a little bit. I'll probably make my mug a little yellow. So watch this. This will really make my fingers stand out on my mug. And I'm painting just yellow right on top because it's a coat of paint already down. So my mug is just going to be brightened a little bit. I'm going to mix white with a little bit of yellow paint. So just take your time and finding the right colors for your objects. Letting it dry, coming back to it. You can see that gnome is holding on to a mug. I might have another arm coming in on the right side, like he's holding it with two hands. And it can be a little bit more red, right? You got to kind of find the color of his body a little bit. And they can be a little bit different of a color. It's not too big of a deal, but similar is good. There we go. So that's another arm coming in, and I can give him another hand on the other side. Just a little bit. You could just do some fingers coming onto the mug. I still want to see the mug, so you can play with that. It's all up for interpretation here. You're your own worst critic, so just have fun with it. All right. So my gnome is holding a mug. I have like touch-up work I can do to outline his fingers and to outline his arms, but it's there. I can touch up the color on the mug too. My pie is looking pretty good over here. It's dry. The gnome is waving. But this is where those final details like help incredibly. So using a fine point brush, a little bit of brown paint, I can outline my pie so it stands out. I can outline the bottom, I can outline the pie tin, I can outline the fingers of my gnome. See that, how his hand just jumped right out? I can put some little tiny slits on the top of the pie, and I can do steam as well. So a little bit of pumpkin, the pie is warm, which is the best. There, okay, super cute. I have pie. And I can use the same color. I could use again the brown if you really want to make the pumpkin rind stand out. You can outline the pumpkin rinds gently with a little bit of brown. Totally optional. But I'm going to come over here and outline the fingers on my mug. That will really allow the hand to jump out on top of the mug. Again, using a small brush, paying attention to the outlining its arm. paying attention to the bristles on the tip of the brush. If your paint is still wet, just come back to it. This paint is actually a little wet, but you can still see what I'm doing, which is good. And this is where you just play with all the final details. So if you want to add any other objects, if you want to add a little bit of a brown line on some of the leaves that are falling from the sky to add a little bit of shading, you could do a little bit of a brown outline on some of these leaves, maybe help with a little bit of a point. These secondary details go a long way. Maybe you want to add more leaves falling from your sky. Maybe you want to change the color of your beards. So many details for you to consider. My pine cones are going to have a little bit of a highlight on them. A little bit of like some yellow dots just to highlight some of the lightness. So on the tip, I'm just kind of doing like a little pyramid. Little dots kind of coming from the top of the pine cone. I'm doing yellow dots on top of brown, yellow and white. And you can see it just gives it some fun texture. Because the tops of pine cones are pointy, and then they kind of have that cool texture. So I'll bring those a little closer so you can see. Just small yellow dots to bring our pine cones to life. If you wanted to put in like green grass, you could. If you wanted to add anything else, you certainly can. There's a couple other fun details I'll share with you as you're playing with your own ideas. You can use a lighter color on top of the shoes, like a lighter, this is like a lighter neutral color, and you can do a thin line on the top of the shoes just to highlight a little shine on top of the shoe, like a little rounded rainbow line on top of the shoes will make those shoes stand out. Okay. And on top of the nose, you can use white paint and do a little white accent on top of the nose. Because the nose has the shaded areas, which are the outlines. And I'm going to use a clean brush for this. I don't want to have it be brown. So it's good to clean your brush along the way here. So with pure white, you can do a rounded white highlight on top of the nose, which is super cute. So there's a lot of depth plays you can have here. You can see I have some light and dark on my hats. If you haven't added any light or dark on your hats, that will help bring your objects to life. You can always add like a little bit of white to like the top of your fingers. A little bit to outline the fingers. The top of the fingers over here. You can always do that. You can add some more white to the beard. You can play with the beard texture. I'm gonna make my beards a little lighter, a little light texture on my beards. But this class you can take as long or as short as you want to as you play around with this detail. This is all for fun. I absolutely cannot wait to see your gnomes. If you have not downloaded the Patreon app yet, please take a minute to do so, because you can upload your artwork to our Share Your Artwork chat, which is available through the app, which is so fun. But what an adorable little gnome scene. Again, you can fill the ground in as much as you want. I added some pine cones. You can tuck in some pumpkins. I obviously added leaves falling from the sky. If I wanted to add red leaves, I could add red leaves. But for me, this is a great balance. If you have any questions with today's class, feel free to shoot me a note. You can send me a private message right within the Patreon app, or you can send me an email. But I want to thank you so much for being here. I hope you had a great time, and I cannot wait to see your artwork. I hope you all have a great fall, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.